what is really interesting about doing the artist way is that I never ever thought, I've always been someone that's just been really creative with my ideas. I've sort of really lived art, and to suddenly feel like I just couldn't get anything out there and I didn't have anything to say has been, and just not being able to do it. I've just not been able to do it. And it's like, what the heck?
Welcome to What's My Thesis? I'm your host, Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Natasha Caruana, who is in Margate in the UK. How are you doing, Natasha?
Hi, Javier. Yeah, I'm good.
I forgot how you say my name. It's been a long time. So we met like almost right at the beginning of this podcast. Like you came to LA, you were staying at a residency here, and then I did an art show, and you kind of took me under your wing like a little bit and like gave me Instagram advice and stuff like that. And I'm really excited to see like what you're doing nowadays, because you're basically just doing this on a broader scale. But like at the top of the game, I want to give you props for like, you really schooled me on a lot of like how to be an artist and how to be a public first facing persona early on, before I even had any listeners. So I want to give you your proper introduction. How are you? How are things in Margate? We'll get into the Work Show Grow stuff.
Yeah. No, it's really amazing to see you still doing the podcast. Like, how many years have you been doing this now?
I'm a little embarrassed to say at this point, because I've been doing it for 5 years, but I stopped, so I don't have the listenership to reflect the amount of time I've been doing it.
You've been doing it. It's consistency, isn't it? You've been showing up. And is that every week you've been doing that? Near enough?
Yeah, I mean, near enough. Yeah, definitely.
That's mad. It's incredible. So when I met you, I was staying in the brewery.
Yeah, at East Side International.
Yeah. I don't know all the reference points. And yeah, it was amazing. I was there. It was an amazing summer. And I just met loads of people. And you were the one, I met you because you were doing this, you were curating a show and organizing a show downstairs in the gallery. And to be honest, the studios were quite quiet. So when there was something happening downstairs in the gallery, it was like, oh, people happening. Okay, this is this is LA. This is the art scene, the artist-led scene. And yeah, it was exciting to hear what your ideas were and to spend that time. And you were very helpful because you had a car.
Yeah, we'll get into that, because
it went two ways. The exchange went two ways. And I had quite a few friends came over that summer as well to visit. And yeah, it was hard because it was a strange one actually at that time, because I had just got a big commission in England to make a VR piece, but my summer was meant to be in LA. So I was having to do a lot of work in LA time, and then also with a team back in London. And yeah, I was very sick after that trip. But it's great that I met lots of people when I was there, and it was really exciting.
I also want to give you your due, because one thing that was also happening at the time, because the show that I curated at the gallery, it was a ceramics show, but it was part of Made in LA, which is not the Made in LA at the Hammer Museum. It's the Made in LA that my homie Molly Schulman put together with my friend Salome Grace. And they basically there were all these, it was August, so it was hot, and there were all these events going around. So like that's where you saw me trying to like kind of become myself now, where I was like going to these events, networking, documenting, showing that I went, because that was kind of the responsibility I took upon myself. Like you were super encouraging with those early posts of just how to like, put things together and present things. So can we talk a little bit about Work Show Grow and introduce that? Because we have a broader topic that I literally wrote morning pages today. I want to tease it a little bit. We're going to talk about the artist way. I feel like one of the things that what I would like to do as I learn more in the art world is explain things to people that I've learned along the way. And disillusionment is part of that, and like understanding what the realities of the art world are. And you've won prizes and stuff like that. Like you are like a legit, like people were impressed by you that I met, like we would go to like different galleries, and just because of who you were and who you were associated with, like you're still like leaps and bounds ahead of me career wise. So it's interesting especially with the artist way stuff, like, you know, it's good for young artists to understand that, like, even at any stage of the game, you know, I think in terms of like people coming out of grad school have a hard time continuing their practice because they're burnt out or whatever, you know. So I do like this topic, but tell us about Work Show Grow, because it is basically a manifestation of all, like, you're basically doing this. You used to joke that I needed to write you a check.
Did I? I can't remember that. Yeah, I mean, it was, but that Made in LA was amazing. I mean, I really got under the teeth, and people were doing stuff in their houses. I went to an elevator show. I went to a show curated on a fridge. Like, it was so exciting. And it was all through that Made in LA. And as part of that, I was documenting what I was doing. I always felt like showing what I was doing, and obviously you know, depending on your platform, doing that via Instagram, it was a form of activism. Like, to show what I was doing every day was like, here I am, I'm doing this. I'm just, you know, progress, not perfection. I'm just trying to make it as a female artist and in somewhere I don't know. And you know, it's so hard for me. I didn't have connection to the art world, and I'm just so grateful for, you know, going, you know, getting into the Royal College of Art, having a scholarship there, and then moving to become into working as a lecturer at university, carrying on my art career at the same time. And I just think, God, how has this happened? I really want to show other people how this has happened. So I suppose Work Show Grow, which is an online educational platform, it started through that real drive of, like, tell people how it actually works.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there is no rule map. That's part of the problem. There's no career path to follow. But just like, how did you get that commission? How have you got this show there? How have you got a residency in LA? Like, how is this all happening? And it's amazing that we have these, you know, ways that we can show people how it really works. Obviously, there can be lots of fictions and constructions with what you present, but I've always tried to present the reality. And I think that was, you know, meeting you was saying, okay, like, if you want to do this podcast, like, let's start talking to people about it. Let's start
Yeah.
showing you're doing it. Let's write. I remember we did your bio, write podcast host on your bio, and
Oh yeah,
curate
we
your
like.
bio. And you were like, ah! I was like, just own it. Like, if you are not going to have the confidence in yourself to say this is what you do, then why are other people going to believe in you? You have to
Yeah.
put it. And it's such a simple thing, but it's that psychology, like that psyche of saying, like, yes, this is me. And yeah, it hurts, it's awkward, but you grow into it, and you just have to do it. No one
Yeah.
else is going to do it for you.
And another thing that you did was make me take ownership of being a curator, because I literally did not have any art of my own in that show. There wasn't.
That's a good curator. So many freaking curators are like, I curate the show, and this is my piece, and this is my piece. You know, I mean, yes, you can obviously do that, you know, particularly artist-led spaces, you know, all those roles are interconnected, and they're fluid. But yeah, it was funny that you were embarrassed about that. I was like, no, that's great. Like,
Yeah,
tell me about the work. And that's how we met. Tell me about the work. I think that's what I first said to you.
I gave you the I'm more of an organizer.
Like,
And you're like,
oh
that's
my God.
bullshit.
Yeah.
You were very, very serious, but I mean, not in a bad way, but you definitely cut through the bullshit, which is, I think, something that I think is probably refreshing to the people. You know, like, there's a therapeutic element to that, right? Like, where it's not, I mean, I guess a therapist would never call you out on your bullshit like that necessarily, but there's like, it's like, yeah, stop, man. Like, you're not getting anything out of this. Like, I remember this is, I remember, I don't even know who it was. I was at a friend's party, and I was talking to them about the podcast, and I was like, yeah, I feel weird about monetizing it and doing advertising. And, and he literally looked at me and was like, no one cares. Like, fuck that. Like, it's just like an integrity thing that I had, that it was a notion, you know. And in fact, I feel like a lot of that comes, I mean, I say it all the time, but I just feel like a lot of that comes from an education system. I know that the system over there is different, because I looked into going to the UK for grad school, and then I decided that for an MA instead of an MFA, it might just cause like weirdness for me over here. But yeah, do they teach Did you learn any of this stuff at the Royal College of London? Because I know some schools do teach stuff like this,
Yeah,
but I
no,
know a
not
lot
not
don't.
really. Yeah, not really. Um, yeah, it was very about making work. I mean, different schools are different, but Royal College of Art is very much about making the work and having lots of crits. And yeah, really quite competitive. But I think what I did, which started this, was that I set up an art studio, co-founded an art studio. It was 2008, so financial crash. Like, what a time to graduate. The year before, everyone was coming in buying, I buy this, I buy this. It's like a big selling show. The final show is like a big selling show. Everyone comes out of Kensington and Knightsbridge and they start selling. In our show, a year later was like ghost town. Like no one was buying
Wow.
anything. And but the upside of a recession like we are in now is there are opportunities for artists. And where loads of businesses were closing, there was a pub in Clapham, which is quite an affluent area, kind of a buzzy area in South London. And there was a large public house, a really beautiful old coach house, a large pub. And on the top floor was offices, and they had to move because, you know, the recession, they couldn't afford it. They needed to rent it out. So I took that on with a co-founder and kind of set it up as this studio called Studio Strike.
Mhm.
And that was so formative in like learning, okay, like let's do events, we had the middle floor, which was a performance space, or kind of it would be for kids' birthday parties or bar mitzvahs, but we used it as a projection space. And then downstairs was a bar, somebody
Mhm.
to clear up after you. So it was like an amazing collaboration between having an event space and also having staff that were there anyway. And that just taught me so much. We had no idea what we were doing. I was just like, no idea.
So
But
that
we
sorry,
ended up,
the pub underneath, was that a separate entity that you collaborated with?
they owned the whole building, so we
So they
rented
would
the top floor. Yeah, so they rented out the top floor to artists, and that top floor, yeah, became together. We became this studio.
okay.
It meant we got funding, we did festivals, and yeah, just when I look back at it now, I was like, God, you know, I think I was 24. I think I was 23, and I just like was doing this big project, and it was so great. And it was so good because we were all young, emerging artists together from all different disciplines. So filmmakers to textile design to graphic designer, and we kind of just muddled through it together, and it was really exciting. And that was where I really learned actually that gave me the first footing into being somebody or being recognized as somebody was simply because I set something up. So when you
Mhm.
become a founder of something, just like you've done with your podcast, you've got something to talk to people about. And it's not
Yeah,
about
yeah.
you and your work, but inadvertently it becomes about you and your work because I was, you know, presenting it as artist led. So I'm still in the studio making my own work. And that was just something that I was like, wow, I wish I'd been told and taught about business at school or entrepreneurship at art school, because artists have to be so entrepreneurial, but we just don't name it or don't talk about it. And we have
Yeah.
to muddle through and find our way. But what if there's a place where you can go and learn and be inspired, not even learn, like be inspired to be like, you can make your own opportunities. Come on, I believe in you. Like, what do you want to make happen? Don't waste that money applying for an open call over and over again. Use that money to put on a show. Go and
Yeah.
paint your grandma's garage white, which is what I did, and put work up and say it's a show and get amazing install shots and then send them to places, send them directly to curators. You know, F boards of where there's a panel deciding who gets in a show or not. Like go to that person directly. And so that's, you know, really kind of what we do at Work Show Grow. We essentially teach confidence in different ways through funding, through personal development, self-development. And yeah, it's amazing to really see people thrive through the process of people
Yeah.
tapping into an online art school, which is for today.
Well, you have a lot of people involved, right? Like you right now you're doing. We can transition into to what? Do you have a specific way of phrasing your topic? I don't want to deny you that
Okay, yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. So yeah, my topic is about blocked creatives, or the create. I feel like the creative block is that's something that's a bit too dismissive in our language. So I was thinking about the blocked creative,
Mm.
um, and how that can happen, and all of the pressures that are around an art career as you progress. I think it's very easy to think it's first when you first start, but that's what I wanted to kind of talk about. Is I feel like we don't talk enough, particularly on podcasts or in magazines. It's always the showy bits. It's never the reality of, it can be fucking hard, and you think your career is going one way, and then shit happens, and you have to regroup and take that time and do a bit of hibernation. And we are forced to feel like we're on the go all the time and have to be on the go all the time on this treadmill. And I don't, I work with public spaces, so public institutions. I am not on the art market treadmill. When I talk about the art world, I'm talking about my art world, which is, it's institutional, essentially. I work with institutions, do long-term commissions. So,
so you're not looking for representation. Is that is that the difference? Or you can have representation?
I mean, there are some artists in my boat, that in my field, that yes, there is representation for, but I don't financially require to sell on a commercial market.
Okay.
I don't, in terms of an art fair. So my money comes in through a commission. So somebody might say, okay, have this money and make something about this topic. Or it might be, I get a lot of Arts Council funding in the UK, which is a really amazing resource. Really learning about getting funding has been fundamental to my career, and learning how to use that language. So every year, in January, you can apply for funding and you could get, 10, 30,000 pounds for that project. And a lot of artists do that. And it's like, okay, I wish I'd known that you can do that.
Yeah.
So, essentially it's empowering artists to be like, you can get money other ways without being on this conveyor belt of making for somebody else. You can make, I suppose for the work that I make, it's about anybody can go into that gallery. Public institutions in the UK, they have an obligation to be for everybody, that anybody will come into that space and experience that art. And that's what I love. That's why I love to make art, is, it can be a conversation.
What can I ask you to just because I know that you British people use different words for stuff sometimes, and so when you're saying you're getting a commission, is that different than a grant, or are you
Okay? Yeah, it's a good question. So a commission would be when somebody funds you to make something, and you might pitch for what that is you're making, or they might say, hey, so for example, the piece that I made when I was out in LA, I was commissioned to make a piece about choice. So it was Arts Council England had funded 2 institutions to run the commission, which was PhotoWorks, which is a big international photography platform, and also House Biennale. It was like a big festival. So they got a pot of money from the Arts Council, and they went to, I think, 4 artists and said, we've got this commission, we've got this, I don't know what it was, £10,000 to make a piece of work for a solo show as part of the highlight of the festival. So can you pitch what your idea would be? So then, I went to an interview process. I said, this is what I want to make. If I'm successful, this is what I'll make. And they said, okay, yeah, we would like your idea. And then you sign a contract, and then you have to deliver that piece of work for that budget. And often what's great, and that's what I did with that project, is when you get one bit of funding, you can go to other people and say, hey, do you want to be do you want to come in with a bit of funding? So those people would be funding, but they wouldn't be commissioning. So commissioning would be, we want to make this piece of work. So you might get a pocket of funding, which a pocket of funding would, for example, the last few years, I've got Arts Council funding just for development. So I don't have to make anything. They'll just give you a pot of money and say, like, for example, I just got £10,000 to just play with drawing for 6 months. So I do 2 days a week in the studio, funded by them, to try and shift towards a drawing practice, which has all been part of this trying to unblock myself.
Okay.
Of getting rattled up.
You came out here when you came out to the East Side International thing, you were here also at the behest of the Museum of Broken Relationships.
Yeah.
Right. So I as people are listening, I'm not so sure that this isn't available here in the US because you seem to have found some opportunities here too. I don't know about any arts council and stuff like that, but I mean, it's just interesting that you like I think it might be about what you need to know. Although it does seem like I don't know that we have I mean, we have the MacArthur Genius Grants and stuff like that, but I don't think we have anything that populist over here, which is interesting. But
Mm.
maybe like the advice I can give artists is to go to the UK.
Yeah, but I think it's a kind of a different system. In you have there's pros to America that we don't have here. I mean, you do have, if you stick with it, you have some amazing life-changing awards that are just massive. Like those chunks
Yeah.
of money are crazy. And I've got one of them. I'm like looking, no, I haven't got one of them. I've got them, one of them. And I was just like, whoa, look at that. When I'm like looking at it, and I talk
Yeah,
about it
yeah.
when I'm funding workshops. But what you do have that we don't have is you have the amazing opportunities around universities. So many
Yeah.
of your universities have galleries attached, and we don't have that system in the UK at all. And it's actually really hard to get these public shows. Whereas I think it was Philadelphia, is it? The like near, is that near Chicago? Yeah.
Philadelphia's in Pennsylvania. It's close enough
Okay,
to
so maybe it's not.
Chicago.
So there's the Kinsey Institute there,
Uh-huh.
which is attached to the university there, and it's amazing, a big research center with a gallery attached around my subject matter of love and relationships. So you can find ways if you really kind of know what your topic is. I think in America, that's kind of how it feels like it works, is you can align yourself to these institutions that have particular topics.
Okay. And then can I quickly, you just talked about briefly what the main themes of your work are, but can we talk about some specific pieces? Because they're pretty interesting. I was into them. You do photography, but you have a pretty heavily conceptual bent, which makes it easy to talk about on the podcast because you don't necessarily have to describe the visuals of it. You have a fun one that is you collected all the pictures of wedding dresses that are for sale where they cut out their faces because they don't necessarily want to be, have a public picture of them out there on like the internet. But you collected all these. What can you talk about that project?
Yeah,
And then
sure.
maybe also talk a little bit about the what's it called? What was the website for the married men thing?
Married man, yeah, married man.
Okay, but
So
what was the name of that? Because we have it. It used to be called something. It was like um, there was one over here, but the British one, what was it called?
uh married man, that
Oh, the
piece.
website. That's not the name of the project.
Oh, the website. So Ashley Madison was one of them. I don't know if you had
Okay.
that in America. Did you have that in America? Yeah, you did,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Obama was found on it, but then they said, oh, it's a
yeah.
fake profile. And when they got
I don't
hacked.
remember that. Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. They got hacked, but then they realized that there was also like Scooby Doo on there and Trump on there. They just were like, people were signing up with impersonated names. Of course, you're not going to sign up with your real name if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
like at that level.
Javier
Um,
Proenza.
but fairy, I suppose the first one that was really early on in my career, which was called Married Man, and for that piece, I was really data and the internet kind of has a large part in my work in terms of the research. They're normally long-term research projects, and the internet and data normally sits quite heavily within that. And so I was really fascinated how these dating apps were pinging up, and how these dating apps specifically for married men to meet mistresses, how would that change the institution of marriage? So normally I have a question in my question, which also helps with the funding. So what is the question you're trying to figure out? And so that was my question, like, how is this changing the institution of marriage? And then I started to look at these websites, and I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And I thought, you know what? I wasn't really sure at this point it was even a project, which it normally happens. I'm just curious. What would it be like to sign up to one of these? What would it be like to be a mistress? What do they say to you? So then I signed up, and I had to sign up to a few because they sort of vetted you to make sure, I don't know how they vet you, but to make sure you're legitimate and, not a sex
Like you're
worker
actually
there for,
Scooby Doo.
yeah, there for a relationship. And so then I went on a few of these dates, and it was it was really interesting because what happened in those first 4 dates that I went on, just kind of in a I wouldn't even say research phase, like curious phase. All the men talked to me like I was a marriage counselor. They talked to me all about their wives and about how unhappy they were. And I became this real emotional support. And I was so surprised because in society and stereotyping, we see on the movies and in the magazines and newspapers, oh, this amazing, mistress and all raunchy. And the idea of what we think an affair is actually very different to what I discovered.
Mhm.
And I just thought, this is fascinating. They're complete polar opposites. So I thought, what would happen if I signed up and actually repeated this idea of seeing a married man and didn't, not about them, not about their own individual stories, but looked at this idea of what was infidelity looking like today at the beginning of dating apps. So I went on 80 dates. So I went on 80 dates with married men. At the beginning, when I was finding my way, I'd kind of go on, one every few days. Towards the end, when a curator found out about the project, he's like, this is fascinating. Let's put this up in an exhibition. And then I was like, okay, let me see how I feel about that. And actually decided to wait a bit between finishing the work. But towards the end of the work, I was seeing like 3 a day. So I'd see like one for brunch, one for lunchtime, one for a cocktail. And it was a really tough piece of work mostly because of their names. They'd say their names is Mickey Blue Eyes online. And then they'd say, my name's Paul. And then you'd meet up with them and they'd say, oh, my name, actually, I must tell you, my name's Jack. So it was like quite a confusing project. It was very performative. It was very ethnographic, very anthropological. So I really kind of got into the psyche of doing that over an 18-month period of predicting how they wanted me to act. So I would just mirror how they wanted me to be. So if, a little bit flirty, I'd be a bit flirty. If, they really wanted to talk to me deeply, they'd talk to me deeply. And at the same time, I was also really interested I'd read Sigmund Freud, Beyond the Pleasure Principle. And he talks about if you repeat something that's traumatic, it will eventually become pleasurable. And that's when I realized that actually what would happen if I kept repeating this. And that came off the back of me having a relationship with a married man. And he really changed my life. He was the one that made me go to university. He was the one that said, hey, get away from all your friends in London. Like, you're really not on a good path, and just changed my life, like completely picked me up and changed my life. And obviously there was kind of a lot of unraveling that I need to do with someone doing that to your life when it was going down one direction and then coming and changing it. But that piece of work was also very cathartic for me to be like, how do I feel about the fact that I was in a relationship with a married man? And then I'm literally doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And that piece obviously caused a lot of contention because, the headlines, and it went viral on Twitter. It had like thousands of comments on Huffington Post. I mean, it went everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it was early on, so I still had my mobile number on my website, like legit those days. Like, oh, no one's gonna ring me. So people started ringing me. People started ringing me saying, can I go on a date? Or people started giving me abuse. And yeah, it was kind of a really heavy thing to be like, wow, the power of art by putting something out there. And it was just hands, and the images were just hands, or someone paying with a credit card.
Well, the way you described it was really like, or back then, that really stuck with me is that you had basically the table was just a stage where it was like you were never showing. So you would have hands and stuff and interactions, but it was all like within your field of view as if you're looking down, right? That is pretty much what, but all the different table setups, all the different interactions, hands holding and stuff like that. So that I feel like that was like a really concise way that stuck with me, not to explain your art to you, but it is your own words.
Yeah, like I always say, the tabletop became like little theaters of the affair.
Yeah.
And it was for the audience to imagine, would you wear that jumper? Would you sit like that? And the audience completely come with their own ideas of an affair. And that's what's so fascinating about it. If you walk into a gallery space and there's 54 large images and a sound piece, and you're confronted with this idea of all these people conducting an affair in that moment, if your dad has had an affair or your husband has had an affair, you look at that work very differently, then somebody would come in the gallery and there'd be people laughing, going, I would never wear that jumper. Oh my God, what is he wearing? So it was a real conversation opener in terms of in terms of a piece. And it was all shot on disposable camera. So something very quick and free. And actually that was fascinating because I learned a lot about how also people see a female artist. You know, I'd
Yeah.
say I'm an artist, I'd have a pseudonym, so they didn't know it was for an art piece. And then I'd get out my camera and say, oh, and I'd only take like one if I felt confident in them. I only take one picture and I say, oh, look at that rose, and take a picture. And as soon as I got out this disposable plastic camera, and they said, oh my God, like, oh, you're not an artist, or they just kind of belittle you. And I just thought that was really quite funny as well, how people saw the tools or the
Yeah,
performance of
yeah.
the artist. So yeah, it was a fascinating experience to do early on as like your first art piece, really.
Uh-huh. Cool. Well, then, I mean, we could keep talking. I always find your work really interesting, but I don't want to detract from your main topic by
Yeah,
continuing
the
to
main
go.
topic.
I mean, because one of the reasons that I like the topic is that what's it called? I was blocked after college, and and that was just for my BFA. I moved out to California, and people were telling me like I had a piece that became very popular, got me some like really good recognition back in the day, back in like 2012. Not at your scale, but just like as somebody that was a nobody, I showed a piece at Cirrus, and a catalog came of it, and people became aware of me slightly, that are now my friends to this day. But yeah, the the book, The Artist's Way, which you're now currently doing with your class. You're at week 5, I think I saw today on the
Mhm.
yeah. So I actually was like, I'm still grieving a little bit because my father passed recently, and this morning I just woke up with heartache, and I did the morning pages. I did 3 morning pages to get me in the mood to do this, and it really does still work. It's like you will be skeptical in the middle of the second page. You're like, I'm not feeling good yet, but then you get to that third page and you're like, oh, like it's almost like at that point you've dumped, and then you're starting to feel better about yourself, and you're starting to like be like, nah, this is all bullshit, blah blah blah, all these fears. I don't know. You said on a post that you use it for mostly to like plan the day ahead and all of that. I've always just used it as a purge of negativity. Like if I make
That's fascinating.
all that stuff that's circling in my head, that would just go on a loop all day long and keep affecting my mood, I just purge it out, and then I literally can mark the point where I'm like, nah, like the first part of it is like, oh, my heart hurts, I'm really sad. And then I guess it's just a process of sitting with it. So I highly recommend anybody who's out of an MFA program or a BFA program, if you are having a hard time coming out of that and you feel like the joy of art making has been taken out of it, there's a lot of really interesting stuff, which you're halfway through. So what do you want to go through like the weeks that you've gone through, maybe? Or sorry, just interject wherever you want. I don't have to
So
format it for you.
I think what is really interesting about doing the artist's way is that it's one of those books that you've heard of or you've had on the shelf or you've seen in a thrift store, charity shop. And I don't know what inspired it, but I think the last year has been really challenging because numerous reasons. You say you go in a Bermuda Triangle. I'd say it was more like I went into a Bermuda hexagon or something. It was just like I'm just like, how do I find my way out? And it was something that I thought, okay, I'm gonna try and dedicate. I'm gonna dedicate that back to school, that September time, that full time to do the artist way, because I never ever thought, I've always been someone that's just been really creative with my ideas. I've sort of really lived art, and to suddenly feel like I just couldn't get anything out there and I didn't have anything to say has been, yeah, and not and just not being able to do it. I've just
Yeah,
not been
yeah.
able to do it. And it's like, what the heck? And I think there's completely legitimate reasons but you just get overwhelmed with all of them coming together. And I think it's just been a time with, you've lost your father, I've lost my mother, and I moved to a new place. And I suddenly found out I was pregnant, and I didn't think that was going to ever happen to me. So there's that massive shift between your time and suddenly your identity. So moving to a new place as a mother, not as an artist, was like, wow, okay, there really is these lines that happen. And I just didn't ever expect that to happen. So this amazing community of Work Show Grow, we do, it's essentially a paid school. So people come and they be part of the school. We've got 100 artists around the world, but we also, as part of our values, we do a lot of free things as well. So there's, we do different retreats and workshops, but we did a big challenge called Traction, Not Distraction, which was 50 days of every morning, me doing an Instagram live on my studio floor. And yeah, sometimes I was crying, like live on Instagram and being like, okay, I really want to draw my mother's blankets this morning. And so I went through that process, and so many people, and some mornings, Suki would come in the room and I'd have to be like, stop what I was doing and make a bug house with her or do some drawings with her and not do what I was doing. And so many people resonated with showing the reality of trying to get focused. But then it was about having a bit of a break after that, and then doing it one step further, doing Traction, Not Distraction, but doing it with support. And Julia Cameron's book, Those 12 Weeks, there's an amazing support system around you trying to get unstuck. Yeah. And it takes you through, a week by week journey. And as part of it, there's kind of information, and there's also tasks that you are set. And then there's the two other elements, which are, and I apologize if you all know this, maybe you do, but it's a good recap. Then the two other elements, which are the non-negotiable artist date, where you have to take yourself on a date for 2 hours every week, and you can't have a child with you, you can't have your partner with you can't have friends with you. It's about a lone moment of you and, as she calls it, your inner child. So you get these moments to yourself. And then also coupled with that, the foundation of all of this is the morning pages. Yeah. And it's about waking up, and on that, when you're kind of like having a stream of consciousness, you're not quite awake, that's the best time to do it, she says in the book. So spending those 3 pages writing every morning and doing that as a discipline of something that you will continue beyond those 12 weeks as well.
Yeah. It's like, it's weird. It's really weird right now because I'm actually getting emotional as you describe it, like almost teared up. But like I'm realizing like there's no me now if I hadn't done this book, because I was super blocked. I had no idea. And I remember what I did is I did the book. I made the work that I wanted to make. It was work that I had wanted to make since grad school. I had the idea, it's the famous receipt printer piece that I always talk about.
Oh,
right?
Nice. Yeah. I remember you showing me that.
And I was like, I just, people were like, yeah, it's just a waste of money. Don't, and then I finally did it, and I did it. And that's one of the things of like, sometimes you can get caught up in thinking that, well, I don't have any showing opportunities coming up. I am nobody. I'm completely irrelevant. No one is ever going to see this piece, but I made it, and then someone saw it, and then it got into a show, but if I never made it, so it's like, it's the steps in the process, but yeah, man, this book has been huge. And I remember the artist dates. And I remember one time I went, this is how intense they can be. I went to like there's like a science museum here, like for kids and stuff. And I went and I watched the what's it called? They have like 3D IMAX movies and stuff. And like I was there by myself, and the woman at the ticket booth was acting like I was sketchy, like for being there at a kids museum in the middle of the day. And I was like, and like, whatever, it's fine, like who gives a fuck, because I didn't get arrested or anything. I didn't do anything creepy, but ultimately I was there with my inner child, so like she didn't see, the perception of what was Yeah. I mean, I like, no, I
Yeah.
just kind
No,
of
wait, I'm
just,
with someone. I'm with my inner child. Can't you
yeah.
see them? They'd be like,
No, I just minded my own business. I mean, I totally get like parents being protective and like all of that shit, but that's not what it was about, you know?
yeah,
But like the, you know, like ultimately the benefit of the artist date was better than the was more important than the judgment, you know? Like the
yeah,
balancing act of like what I was there to like enjoy these movies. There was a movie about the Hubble telescope in 3D, which was awesome. It was narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio. And then there was this like really lovely movie about all these this like refuge that I've seen like clips of it since on like social media of like this refuge that takes care of orphaned elephants and orphaned orangutans. And it was all about how much love and affection they need when they're young. It was like,
oh,
you know, so it was like, whatever. I mean, that was just a detail of the day. And then I bought myself astronaut ice cream, you know, and that was just one of many, many artist dates that I took myself on, you know. But
yeah. No,
yeah,
and it's that's what's so amazing about offering it. I just said, okay, I'm doing this. If you want to participate in this, we're doing it for free. I'm facilitating it. So we made a this time I didn't want to be crying on Instagram, so we made a private Facebook group. I worked out how to go on Facebook again. I'm like, okay, what is my account? Did that. And then so we had, I think it's 170 artists sign up for the challenge. So every morning I get up at 5 and I do my pages, and then at 6 I kind of go live, and when I do a little spiel about Monday, I introduce the new topic and half the chapter. The Tuesday is the rest of the chapter if it needs it, and then the tasks. Wednesday we do the wins of the group, so it's really lots of people commenting and giving their perspective on what is happening for them, and that's so amazing. I really feel like I'm getting so much more from this, from doing it with people,
yeah,
because they're sharing. Every time you can bring something up, they are sharing what their perspective is, and it's amazing. It's like a massive hug every day right now. And then
yeah,
on Thursdays we do the artist dates, so I amalgamate all the comments from the week before, what everyone's doing, and have it as a big inspiration list. We've had some amazing artist dates, from someone, you know, going and getting a jigsaw puzzle and doing a jigsaw puzzle on the floor. I'm like, I love that. It's just so wonderful. To
yeah,
people going off
yeah,
to galleries. Some went off to Milan to see something. I was like, okay, that's a big one. But of course, we're in Europe, so we can just like zip off and do things like that. And yeah, it's been really great. And also to discuss things that come up in the book which are challenging. I think that's one thing that is not great about the book. So for example, I think it's in chapter 3, Julia Cameron talks a lot about crazy makers. And crazy makers are the people around you that just make it all about them. You know, they're really disruptive, they take your energy away. You know, it's their schedule or no schedule. They'll turn up late, or you know, all that, you know,
yeah.
we
She
all have these
references
type of people.
she was married to what's his name, Martin Scorsese, so she's like an insider in the whole world. So she references she's not talking about Martin Scorsese, but
Yeah.
she references like auteur filmmakers that were just insufferable in like it vaguely, but yeah, I remember that chapter. This book
But
was
yeah,
impactful.
yeah, a bit. You know, there's like pages, like 4 pages on the crazy makers. But then she says, you need to, as the, you know, the summary was like, if you're feeling like this, you should go and get Love Addiction Anonymous and go for counseling. And it's like, well, that really doesn't give me the building blocks to get these people out of my life.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
for example, a lot of people in the chat said, yeah, I've identified who those crazy makers are. And also you do the task. So the task are like, in the circle, write down who supports you, who gives you positive energy, and on the outside, who are the crazy makers. So you're doing all this work to identify those people, and then you're not really given the steps to think, how do I move on?
yeah.
So in the group, we've been having some really amazing conversations where I wouldn't, you know, a lot of people are strangers that are opening up and saying, actually, yeah, this person, that person, what can I do? And so there's that. I think that there does need to be more support in terms of how you can work through it. And then the other thing that a lot of people have in the book is there's always that chatter about the way that Julia Cameron references the great creator and God
Yeah.
quite a lot. So the book is a spiritual path to higher creativity, is the tagline of the book. So obviously when you pick it up, it does say spiritual path. So you probably couldn't know that. But actually it's taken me to week 5 and a lot of conversations in the group about how we move forward and not think, oh, that doesn't relate to me, and shut that down.
Yeah.
How do you actually refer that to your universe or your perspective or the way you see universal pool and the way you see serendipity, as she puts it, happening? Like, why does serendipity happen? Why,
Yeah.
if you put yourself out there and make that work, why does then somebody come in and say, oh, you've made that work, I'm going to take it, build it, they would come? Like,
Yeah.
why, how does that happen? um and you know, we even have I think it's a vicar that we have in our group, or a priest, as part of doing it. So it's always
Well,
like,
a vicar and a priest are
God.
not the same.
No, no, I can't remember which.
Oh,
I
oh,
can't. I
okay,
think it's a
okay.
vicar. I think it's a vicar. Yeah.
Because a vicar can sin in like openly.
Yeah. So, you know, there's lots, and some people that like, I can't carry on with this. Every time she mentions the God, I just don't believe in all of her other points, because I don't believe in that. So
Yeah.
we're all kind of figuring it out together, and but yet sticking through it, you know. And I've been quite ill, you know. I've had really bad COVID, and I've been doing this in bed in my pajamas. It's like, come on, I'm still showing up, because also your body holds trauma. So, you know, the trauma of not being able to make work, it's like it's showing up physically for me. And it's amazing to be part of this group doing it. So I'd recommend, if people wanted to do the artist way, put it out there and say who wants to do it with me. But
Yeah.
also, I do feel like it helped when I started to mention more and more that how all these crazy makers and all these pools that are happening in our day to day, and we're not nurturing our inner child, we're not giving our artwork the time, or our artists the time, is to say to people, I'm on a really intense 12-week course right now. I'm on a really intense course, a course that I have to do every single day for 74 days. It's like, it's a lot of work.
No, it
And
is.
yeah, I think that's helped some people as well, because everyone kind of thinks, oh, the artist way, they don't really understand the intensity of it. But actually, I was listening to a podcast today of a neuroscientist talking about the synapses in the brain, and how if you really want to move through and make new neuron pathways and develop your brain, you have to have really these really intense moments of learning, like more than like, okay, I'm just testing that out, like really
Yeah.
intense to shift things. And I was like, that's fascinating, because that's how I see the artist way. It is really difficult. I don't know if you have points where you wanted to give up. Can you remember that far back?
I can remember. I don't think I did. I pretty much, but I was like, I was pretty desperate and I was alone. So I think that like I didn't stop because there was no other option. Like it's not like I think I could see myself now faltering because I am like already somewhat active in the art scene. You know, I know like my profile keeps going up, right? So right now I am at a comfort level where I understand that if I keep doing this, it'll keep going up until I fuck up and everybody hates me. That's the
But then you'll get
caution.
props, like, you know, you'll be cancelled, you can come back in another
Yeah,
iteration.
yeah. I'll have to like be like a full on pro war and everything. You know, like just being with the political elite class that is like very angry about people having resources. But yeah, I think that when I did it, I just was like I just didn't have any other touchstone to the art world. I remember what you were talking about with the for me, the way she explained the great creator thing, the way she framed it was fine for me, you know, because she's like she puts it into the terms for like I definitely think that it would be interesting to have like an updated version, you know, although it's hard to like say that, you know, like yeah,
Yeah.
she needs to go back and revise it because it's kind of it is what it is and it's perfect and for what it was at the time, you know. I think our world is like very much different now, right? Like I would put a lot more emphasis on social media and
Yeah.
how
Well,
that
that's the thing. In week 4, I mean, this was like so far out. Some of the ideas are so far out. And week 4, as not even a task, as just part of the chat in the it's part of the chat in the chapter, she just throws in oh, you can do this additional exercise this week, and we're going to do reading deprivation. So
Yeah.
you can't read anything. And obviously, the updated version of that is, because this was written pre-social media, you can't scroll, no doom scrolling, no
Yeah.
podcasts. Don't have anything else coming into your mind and allowing to take away your creativity and your focus. So we've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
going crazy on the chat. Like, how could I not have these? How can I not read? How can I not do these things? And I've had to go and buy Opal, which is an app to shut down all your apps so that I'm not distracted.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
pick up my phone. And yeah, it really made a difference actually on my artist date that week, because I just sat and I was so present and I didn't actually pick up my phone. I didn't do these things. And obviously it's so obvious. And when you read it, you're like, I can't do that. But when you do it and you really listen to what she's saying and you take it on board, actually it really does make a difference. Your ideas and that noise of everyday life just goes away, and you
Yeah.
hear these ideas pop up. I was like, this is
Yeah.
what you need as a blocked artist is, I think we try and surround ourselves with noise and busyness, and actually as a blocked artist it's good just to like be still and be quiet, because the creativity is still there. It's just got to find its way out.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that like a lot of modern society is all about like never being bored, right?
Mm.
Like you just don't, it's an option to not be bored. And then you get into these places where you get bored being entertained. And then it's like a hollow feeling. It's like uh like, and so I think, but I do think boredom is like one of the most important parts of being an artist, because like that's where the creativity comes from. Your brain entertains yourself to some degree, right? Can
Your
you
imagination comes into play. It's like,
yeah,
let your
yeah.
imagination, we're always giving our imagination to somebody else, like let your imagination have a moment.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Mm.
Um, can I ask you like what are the 5 weeks that you've done so far? Do you remember the like what the
Oh,
main
well, I have
themes
the
of the
book so
Okay.
I can go through them. um so yeah, they we have, I mean, I can probably remember them, to be honest. So there's quite an intro, the basic tools, and then, hey, why don't I just go to the
Contents?
yeah, surely there's a list. Yes, there is. Okay. See, I'm trying not to look ahead, so I try not to look ahead to the other weeks. Okay, number one is recovering a sense of safety, and
So
that's quite
that's a lot of stuff about inner critic and the
yeah,
inner censor, right?
yeah, and also talking about your affirmations. So as which I actually haven't been that great about, but after doing your morning pages, you're meant to say your affirmations. I probably do it half the week. And actually, I need to spend some more time on that. Again, this podcast today, where it's like you can reprogram your mind. Like they found that is true. You can
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
reprogram your mind. So I was like, okay, tomorrow morning, I'm on the affirmations. I'm wearing them as a t-shirt. I'm living them. So she talks about that. So recovering a sense of safety. The second one is recovering a sense of identity, and that's where she talks about poisonous playmates and crazy makers and skepticism, and you not believing that you can be this artist. Then recovering a sense of power. So that's where she deals with criticism. And she gave some really interesting work about that, actually. Like, had she listened to criticism of somebody else at a particular point, she would have never gone on to win this and that, and gave some quite nice, solid examples of why would you listen to one person?
Yeah,
Why does
yeah.
it matter? Why does it matter
Yeah.
if they don't like it? Like, you've made it.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
put it out in the world. Like, that is amazing. And to just really have joy in that,
That's
and to really
something that I think
accomplish
about
it.
a lot because, the more people know you, the more people are not going to like you, or the more
Yeah.
people there are in the world. Like you're just the percentages are going to
Mm.
scale up, and it gets a little nerve wracking when you're trying to be more known.
Yeah. Yeah. And then week 4, recovering a sense of integrity. So this is quite nice. There's lots of kind of quick exercises all around your childhood. So what did you like doing as a child? What brought you joy as a child? What was an adventure as a child? And then like, what are you doing now? Why are you doing those now? So that's quite a nice one. And then also kind of doing detective work and thinking about what were your 5 traits that you know of you as a child, and how are they now? So that's
Wow.
quite a nice one. And then now I'm currently doing recovering a sense of possibility. So that is thinking about your limits and your joys, and this idea of, yeah, just kind of thinking about what it is you're doing in terms of your virtue trap, she calls it. Virtue trap, I feel like that's a word we don't really use, but what she essentially means is people pleasing. How
Yeah.
are you putting other people first before yourself? And there's been a few people in our group that have really sort of said, wow, that's really unlocked something in me reading that, of
Yeah.
why am I always putting people pleasing and doing this and doing that? Why don't I say, no, I need to go to the studio and play, or I need to sit in the desk in the corner and play for 2 hours. And yes, that is work. No, I can't do that thing.
Yeah.
And so, and I do feel it's hard again being a creative, because so many people don't know what we do all day. It's always that
Yeah.
art question, isn't it? What do artists do all day? So, making you say, yes, what I'm doing is worthwhile. So that's where we're at, and I'm already reading ahead. Chapter 6, recovering a sense of abundance. I'm not reading it. It's a whole chapter about the great creator. So yeah, and it's a funny one with the great creator, because I have my beliefs and my opinions, but facilitating this group, as it's facilitating, I'm doing it as an artist, so I'm also saying I'm struggling with this, I'm not struggling with this. I'm
Yeah.
trying to leave that topic quite open, because I'm aware that I don't want to influence anybody else's journey through the artist way. So it's always that kind of balancing act, whilst it also being 6 a.m. and I'm in bed in pajamas. So it's like hopefully people are appreciating it, and it's really fun to do. And now that we're nearly halfway through, I'm already having that negative thought of, what if it doesn't help? What if it doesn't, which is so bad. And I
Yeah.
do think one of these curses of this blocked artist is, I had yeah, it was like a year ago now, I had a really big early career retrospective. So 169 works in France, a big new art center, and which is just on the hill of Cannes. So it's called a town called Mougins, which is like Rihanna's got a villa there. It's like all the stars have got villas there, because Cannes is done. So there's like this new little town like up on the hill. Picasso used to go there, Van Gogh used to go there. And so I had this big solo show, and it's kind of terrifying to have all the work you've made in one place, and the whole journey of your work as a bit of a full stop, because
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
where do you go from that? And also, that was a show that was meant to happen, cancelled in the pandemic, moved forward, the building didn't get finished, and so any touring or anything that was set up is just the work's still there, and you just feel such a failure from the fact that, why do you feel that? Because that's made, because you don't know where to go next. And I think that is a really terrifying thing as you go further on in your career, of what comes next, and all those thoughts of, you're only as good as the last idea. I hate that. I hate
No,
that.
I if I can interject, I would say that like my main takeaway and the whole thing with the morning pages and all of that is that like you just make, you don't think about like what you like, because the part of it is an exploration, right? Like the stuff I'm making now, I've been unhappy with for a very long time. Now I'm kind of starting to like it because I figured out how it works, right? But I think if you don't show up to the page, right, it's like that you have to draw bad before you can draw good.
Mm.
You're never gonna get, like, if you just don't do it, you're never gonna make anything else. And there might be some safety in that, right? Because then you don't have to like risk anything. You don't have to do the whole journey of the disappointment in the work and of hating it. It's not like, creative process is not easy. Like you said, people do not understand it. And it's also true that I think a lot of people that engage in creative processes don't understand people that don't engage in them. Like when I'm dating people and I'm like, like I went on a hike with a woman the other day, and I was like, "Do you have any hobbies?" And she goes, "No, I watch movies and I hike." And I'm like, I'm like, I don't know how to talk to you. Not that you're not a valuable human being, member of society. You probably have really interesting things to say. I just don't know how to relate to you in a way that I can access that side of you, you know? And so we're just like turned off by each other and like just didn't finish the hike. But it is really strange. But then
You
at the
didn't
same
finish the
time,
hike. You didn't finish the hike.
I continued the hike. She left.
Oh, whoa.
No, it was. I mean, it was fine, dude. I didn't want to keep talking to her. Like she
No,
was.
but it's like I just can imagine you like up a mountain and you'd be like, okay, bye.
No, no, no. It's up. It's a small hike from like from around. You know, I'm not gonna give my hike away, but it's a small hike in Griffith Park.
Okay,
You
fine.
know,
Fine.
but no, it was just like it was so early on. We just realized that like because
Okay.
I'm talking about like fun, like I'm like, hey, I like to do this, I like to do that, and no, she probably already decided she wasn't attracted to me, which I'm totally fine with. I don't want to like talk. It was going to be more torture. But the like anyway, the main point is I think, yeah, it's a very difficult thing to kind of even describe to people, right? Like I've had people try to listen to this podcast and they don't get it. Family members and stuff. They're like, "Yeah, it's very smart, but I don't get it." Which is like, it's nice of them to say it's smart. I don't know necessarily always feel it's always smart, but yeah, like I think it's very difficult, and to like to be pulled away from the practice, like it's a practice. You can't knock it. You can't have purpose towards your next piece already. You have to explore, and then the person, the part of you that's like really into it is going to get excited when you hit that thing.
I mean, and right, so one of my techniques to get through this is I'm just currently doing 3 days a week at the Royal Drawing School in London. So drawing on different topics and really just throwing myself into that and trying to not have the negative thoughts of that you can't draw, or there's so many other drawers out there that are so much better than you. Why start now, like 15, 20 years into your career? Why start and something new? And all of that thought, and I'm just like, no, just enjoy it, just enjoy
Yeah.
it. But it's such a hard thing to tell you constantly, just enjoy the mark making, just be in the moment, get into the flow. And yeah, I mean, it's hard. In next weekend, so the 14th, 10 days time, I'm having an open studio and I'm meant to be showing my drawing, and I'm like, why did I book that in? Why is that out there as part of this art tour in Margate? And it's just on Sunday, I'm hoping to just get in some major flow and do loads of drawings because something's got to happen. So I think
That's
sometimes the deadline hopefully is going to be, well, I'll let you know. You can put it in the postscript whether the deadline was useful or not. Because I booked it in thinking, right, I'll do 6 weeks, 7 weeks the artist way, and I'll do an open studios and everything will be fine. But I had no idea how much I'm going to be broken down by Julia Cameron, and I'm not ready to be back up yet. I'm in pieces right now.
what tell me about that, if without getting too dark or too vulnerable, but like what do you feel like she's broken down that you need to build back up? Because I remember that feeling. Like, where do you feel like you're like not, your confidence has been shaken?
It's kind of
And
like in the chest. It's like a tightness that you can't breathe because you'll
okay.
just feel like you want to come up for air because there's just so much to think about. There's so much awareness that she gives you of things in your life that you just didn't acknowledge. So, poisonous playmates, crazy makers, and criticism and listening. She gets you to write out one of the exercises, one of the tasks was write a letter to somebody that criticized your work and don't post it, or and in that letter defend what they said to you. Another time was write out all the do a time block of all the bad things that have been said about you and your art. Each year or each 5 years, write out all the 5 things sorry, every 5 years, write out those things. You know, the teacher that says you can't do art because you can't draw, or someone saying, I didn't like it, it had no meaning. All those things are in your head, write them out. And then write out all the things that have been compliments. So all those words that you have in your mind. And for me, it was just so incredible that I could write out like that all the negative things that people have said, and I could not write a single thing that was positive. Not positive. I couldn't remember. I could remember compliments, but you're meant to write word for word what somebody said to you. And word for word, I could not remember somebody saying something that really I hold in my heart. I was like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
So part of the, block, breaking down is realizing how you've been acting, how you've been showing up, and without even knowing that you're doing it. And that has just been really a hard pill to swallow, because you're like, wow, I'd wish I had done that book so earlier on, because it just gives you such a different perspective on creativity of
Yeah.
actually, all those things. And yeah, so that's why I feel like, well, what's next? I'm so fearful because of what I've unlocked already in the next 6 weeks. Like, what is going to happen? And I'm just
No,
hoping I get put back together.
I'm really happy you shared how intense it is, because it is really intense. I mean, these are very, very deep questions for artists about, like, this is existentialism on a real level, right? And I forget that element. All I remember is
I
just
know
like,
my voice is going. It's like,
yeah.
it's hard.
No, it is. It's really, really intense. But I mean, I think that just speaks to how much this matters to you, right? Like, this is like, because I've always known you. I mean, and it's also really fascinating for me because you were so confident, like when I met you, right? Like you had just gotten the BMW award, and a bunch of other cool like things that I was just like, were just completely outside of my reality, right? And I still look up to you like with mad respect. But it's interesting, and I think it's really helpful for me to hear that, even someone as accomplished as you can like struggle with these things. I think not that Eat, Pray, Love is a really good book or anything. I have never read it, but there is that TED talk of the woman that wrote it, who like she wrote the mega blockbuster, right? And I think one of the things that is really interesting about that TED talk, not that I would like endorse TED or anything like that. I just saw that back when that shit was relevant. Um, that she talks about like the pressure of having to keep making art after like she wrote a book that she was probably never going to write anything that could compete with it. It's one of those freakish anomaly things where something goes viral and Julia Roberts ends up playing you, right? Like that's probably never going to happen again to her. And what she realized is like, what I think the artist's way is, it messes with it rearranges your assumptions of how it is that you make art and why it is that you make art. And one of the things that that comes up in that TED talk is the idea of the genius, the classical idea of the genius, because nowadays Elon Musk, some people say he's a genius. The human being is the genius, but the genius in classical time was something that you accessed, right? Like the genius was another entity, which is why it's interesting. Like there is some level of like if you want to make the great creator thing secular, because I'm pretty much agnostic most of the time, unless I'm like miss my dad, but like, or I'm like super vulnerable. I talk about that all the time. Like if I'm weak, I need a God, I reach out to a God and a God is there, but I don't spend all most of my time consumed by that. But I think that like, to frame it, you can also just frame it as like you're tapping into like a zeitgeist or a collective
Yeah.
unconscious, right? Which is not that mystical, because that is the basis of all art, right? Like the things that in art history stand out are things that are relevant to the way people were thinking at the time, like Picasso, all of those ideas that there's like no space between us, right? Like that it's just imagined. Like the space between me and you, even all the way in London, is densely packed with particles and things like that. And all those little things that just kind of become of the time and a reflection, right? Like nobody's necessarily dismantling systems with art. They're more than anything, it's just a document, like it's a historical record of the experience of the time, right? Of what it was like. So it's really interesting to see you kind of going through that process, because I've been through it, and I've been thinking about doing it again as like a live stream myself. So it's going to look like I stole the idea from you, but I am
Well, there's
100%.
lots of people doing it. There's lots, but I mean, I know I do think that coming, going full circle is me standing up and showing what I'm doing early on, of being like, this is a form of activism. I think it's a form of activism of also talking about that you can be blocked, that you can
Yeah.
be into your career and you can be blocked, because and you do have to I've had to cancel things. I've had to say, sorry, I can't deliver that. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
hard because it's everything you've worked for. I stuff just going wrong. For the first time I had 3 shows opening consecutively at the beginning of the year, and one of the pieces just didn't make it. And it's like, wow, okay. It's like,
Yeah. I
it's
saw you
hard.
post about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I was like, right, I really need to just sort of regroup this and take a step back. And I suppose realistically, if I didn't have a new child, and I would be like, okay, this is a perfect time for a residency, and I would just go on a residency somewhere, and that would allow me to do that, to have that time for myself and play with the inner child. But the reality is, and for a lot of people, we are juggling multiple jobs, we're juggling commitments and responsibilities. We can't just go off on a residency like maybe I would used to be able to do, 5 years ago or so. But so I couldn't reach out to that tool that I'd used in the past. So it's like, okay, I just need to try whatever I can, really, to
So you
just
just moved to the
try to.
beach then.
Yeah, so I moved to the beach. I moved to the beach to try and be on holiday. My life's on holiday. But also it's a real identity shift. I've born and bred London. I'm Londoner. And so to move to a town, yeah, it's a very creative town, with Tracy Emin here and all of that, the fanfare and all of that here. But also I'm not in London. I'm not there. I don't have family and friends around me, no family around here. So it's kind of a big shift and a big thing of like, well, let's just do it. It's kind of like what Julia says, where she's like, what did you want? What were your dreams as a kid? I always wanted to live by the seaside, as many people wanted to do. If I had a
Yeah.
kid, I would like, right, my kid's gonna be brought up at the seaside. So as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was like, right, let's go to the seaside. Let's shake things up a bit. And, I'm still, the jury's still out whether it's working or not. But you have to try these things. You've got to lean, as she even says, you've got to lean into the faith of it, because the net will catch you. I think that's one of her quotes.
Yeah. No, it's really important work that she did. I mean, I can't imagine what it must feel like, as someone who does a podcast that is somewhat related in the sense of like getting people a sense of what the art world is, underneath all of it. I know I talk to people about like specific topics and whatnot, but ultimately I'm picking people's brains on how the art world works according to them. And it's always interesting. The art world is so vast. Like it
Mm.
really is. And it's so easy to get into a small little corner of it and think it's that big, right? The other thing is interesting is that you're a photographer, as far as I know. You mostly that's your main. That's how you mostly identify. So, uh, kudos to you on showing your drawings. That must be like very very nerve wracking. But I really want to see them.
I think when I was always a photographic artist, so I'd work with sculpture and I work a lot with installation and video.
Hmm.
But I suppose if you'd say traditionally the training, not that you can have training photography, but the training, like going to train at painting. I trained in photography, so I studied photography, but always
And
very
that
loose.
that always has kind of a conceptual bent.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
I would use
so.
it. I
I can
wouldn't look
relate
through
to
the
being
lens.
blocked. I could totally relate to being blocked with
Yeah,
photography, because it is
yeah,
like it's almost like it's almost like it is such a critical, you have to be critical because the editing is such a large component of it. You're editing the world, then you're editing your photographs, and then all of that. Like I actually, it made me fucking mad And I had to stop identifying as a photographer because that's actually the blockage. And I just became a conceptual dude. And then now I'm like a little bit bored of that because it's a little too like I like the thing that I love that piece, that the receipt printer piece that you saw, but the thing I hate about it is how easy it is to explain to people, like it's like a punchline. It's a joke and a punchline. So now I'm trying to get away from that, and I'm going into this more like into this different place where now I'm painting all of a sudden. And I
Oh,
feel like
wow.
but I also feel like a poseur, because because like I have friends that are like actual painters who mix paint colors. And I was telling this to somebody that I was hanging out with yesterday, that I'm going to have on the show, Daniel. I don't know his last name yet, but I just met him. But I was telling him this, and he's like, "That's such a like, you know." Renaissance masters, like non-contemporary way to think about painting,
Yeah.
because it's
Mm.
like, yeah, I mask and I paint, like what the fuck, that's art, nowadays in the contemporary postmodern sense. But I still feel a guilt to like, I feel like a poser in the tradition, you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I would discourage you from feeling that way about your drawings if it is that you haven't expressed that, but if that is, but like
Yeah.
seriously, it's gonna be super interesting, and I bet you people are gonna be into it because you probably have your idea of what your drawings should be like, but your drawings are probably pretty awesome.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'd think of it more as mark making, and I'm doing a lot with my non-dominant hand, and that is so fun. Like just
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
it quickly because and not taking the pen off the paper because you just can't you can't interfere with that. It's like it is what it is. And yeah, so that's yeah, I mean, I'm doing it. It's gonna have to happen. I've made the decision now. I've been like, I don't want to do it.
Well, I would
Um,
love to do
it's good.
another studio visit like I got to do with your other piece, the 3D
Yeah.
piece, because
Will
that
you
was,
are you gonna come? Are you gonna come to the UK ever? Do you think?
I don't know. I mean, not anytime within the next
Yeah,
like year and a half. I'm buckling down for the coming recession collapse to like a Great Depression. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not a financial analyst, but it doesn't look like it when people out when you hear on the news people saying that like the only way to fix the economy is to raise unemployment. You're like, what? So
I know. I mean, Work Show Grow just turned 3, so I'm hopefully we can ride through it. Let's see
yeah.
what happens and like continue to give artists support and yeah, continue to give a disruptive form of arts education, which I really believe in. It's so expensive art education, but we're offering, it's like it's £600 for a whole year, £59. I don't know the conversion, sorry. And they get they get workshops, they get their mentorship, they have a resources library of over 100 sessions on there. They have every month you have a crit, so 8 people can come together and discuss work in progress peer to peer, and that's
Mhm.
great. Like tomorrow at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, I'm having a crit, and I'm in my studio now, and I'm gonna put the work up as though I'm gonna have the open studio next week and test things out and talk to people about it. And that's so amazing to have that peer group, support group, and accountability. And I think a lot of people miss that actually of well, if you want to be the artist, like what's your support network and what's your accountability? I know tomorrow is going to be really busy because I at 7 o'clock I've got a deadline, and if I didn't have
Mm.
that, I probably wouldn't make it. So, Work Show Grow offering those monthly crits are, and people have been making amazing work because every month they've had to show up and do the crit, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it's incredible to put that together.
No, I'm really excited about what you guys are doing over there. I'm super supportive of any I like I mean, it's well documented how I feel about academia. I know that you still work in it, so I won't badmouth it too much. But I think that especially in the US it is very prohibitive. And I'm like literally discouraging some people. I'm straight out discouraging people to go to private art schools, like, openly. I think that if you go to like a state school, anything that you can ever pay the debt off is going to make sure that if you owe $300,000 at the start of your career, you're never going to make
Crazy.
art. You're never going to make art. So
Is that how
I
much you could owe?
I mean, that's, yeah, the programs are pretty expensive out here because they'll
It's
they'll quote
insane.
you. I mean, it's been a long time, so I may be inflating the numbers a little bit, and it probably includes housing the way
I
that
was about
I'm
to say,
breaking.
once you do your housing and your food and
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
yeah.
But it's like, but yeah, they told me that with their estimate at Cal Arts, which was the school that I got into that I decided not to go to, that I have a lot of friends that went to, so no hate on their decision, but I'm just saying that like for me, I just didn't see the financial benefit for me because I just didn't want to teach. But I
Mm.
know people that, like you can there are different avenues. It's you can just start a podcast too.
Yeah,
you know
exactly. Exactly. You can get the tutors that you wanted to learn from, get them on your podcast, and you can learn from them.
Yeah, that's literally what I'm doing right now. In the present moment, I am having a conversation with one of my tutors and rekindling that tutorial relationship because
That's so
yeah,
funny.
I'm really excited about what you're doing, and I feel like we are simpatico, like the podcast and what you do are very much on the same page, very much about asserting your own relevance, which
Yeah.
is by the end of the artist way, that's where I was. I hope that that's where you are too. Maybe
I'm
look,
writing that down,
you know
asserting your own relevance.
yeah, like nobody fucking knew me when I started,
Yeah.
like, and then yeah, I'm not that I'm like a huge fucking name, but like you said, when I show up to people and people introduce me that have never met me and have no concept of what the podcast is, they're like, oh, he runs a podcast. I already come with some like
Yeah.
cred, because I'm doing something right. Like I have decided that I'm relevant, and
Yeah.
people acknowledge that. Like in it,
Yeah. And you're adding value. You're part of the conversation. You've pulled up a chair. That's essentially
yeah.
what your podcast is. You've pulled up a chair and you're like, hey, I'm sitting at this table. Move aside.
And I like
It's
to
great.
say things that are not necessarily allowed, or because I'm not necessarily trying to get into the same I don't have to have the same career as other people, right? Like because I can depend on the podcast as maybe a monetizing source in the future. Shit, maybe I'm just ruining all future career prospects. But I can be critical of spaces like I keep saying I shouldn't do this, but I'm not a huge fan of Hyperallergic and a lot of the publications. I feel like a lot of um I feel like a lot of media is made to keep people that have the money to buy products happy, right? And I think if you start to question that kind of that hierarchy, you really get a sense of like who's really in charge in this country and who's really getting, and who, like, if you listen at what advertisers are trying to um you know not be associated with, right? Like we don't want to be associated with this brand, we don't want to be associated with that. You start to get a real sense of like who really has pull as consumers in this country, and not, artists are left out of that shit a lot, right?
Mm.
Like how much is sold to artists. Artists are just kind of like, we have the writer's strike right now, like always getting devalued, right? But our education is so expensive, right? Like constantly we are worth less. There's no conversation about what happens beneath, like, the top of the top. And like I just find all that stuff relevant, and I think you do that too. Like, I wish there was a you here so that they knew how to get money here, and there was a work showgirl that I could join here. Because all of the stuff seems so specific. But yeah, you're also like, you are a very outgoing person, and one of the things that I remember about you is like you're small, you're like short, but you're feisty. Like I just remember you taking people on in conversation and just like making them seem tiny. It's very interesting. There's a big brain in there that's always functioning.
Yeah, maybe it's that I grew up with four brothers, the only daughter. So I've always had to fight.
How tall are you? I don't
I've
remember.
always 5'2".
5'2". Oh, you're
Not
not
that
that
short. Oh,
short.
do you do foot? Yeah, 5'2". It's not that
Yeah.
short.
Yeah,
It's not
you're
that
not
short.
that short. But
Yeah,
I
not
get, I
that
mean, I'm also not that tall. So
short.
to me, we're close. I'm closer in size to you
Yeah.
than
So
to other people.
is Made in LA still running? Are they still?
We're trying to convince Molly, but it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
There's some talk of it coming back. I'm always going to push for it and slightly gently pressure her. But we're going to the Made in LA at the Hammer, uh,
Cool.
in as a fun, ironic like joke between us
Yeah.
this Sunday because it's out now. So technically, Made in LA would be going on about now,
Yeah.
but they just need a break. And it's also good. I mean, I took a month break after my father passed. I just needed
Yeah.
it, like it's fine to feel like the constant capitalist pressure to like constantly be pushing forward. But yeah, if Made in LA ever comes back, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. I'll come out for it. Maybe you can curate the show or something. It'd be nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We've always talked about you curating a show with me so that I could up my my clout, and I'm transparently for that.
Yeah. That's nice. That's
All
nice.
right. Anything that you wanted to like say that you didn't get a chance to say because I spoke over you? Any thoughts that you want to get out because you got this chance and you might think later
Uh,
like, oh, I should have said that? It's fine if you
no,
don't.
I think it's good. I mean, also it's very late for me here. It's 20 to
No, no, yeah, yeah.
20 to 10. So I am a morning person. I am like 5 a.m. up. So this is like night out. I don't do night out.
I tricked
So
you into doing a full hour and a half.
yeah, you did. You did. You tricked me. Um, but I think even although it's like a little sleepy, I'm still very happy with what we've talked about. I think the only thing I was wondering about was with the blocked artist and Julia Cameron is I didn't know whether to look at her. She's done 45 books. She's written
Yeah.
45 books, which is crazy. I'm like, do I look at other ones or not? She does writers' retreats as well. I'm like, what would that be like?
Yeah.
But I think I'm just going to go through the process. And we've been talking about that of actually, do you go to a writer's retreat or do we work on a next book afterwards? But I feel like it's just a one-off. So I'll see how I feel at the end of it because I
Yeah.
think you go through that process and then you have to leave time to see. So yeah, I'll be in touch and let you know what the outcome is. But
Well,
thank you for
people can follow you at it's at Work Show Grow, right?
yeah, and at Natasha.Caruana, Caruana. I always say it's rhymes with marijuana. Caruana, marijuana. That's how you say it.
Yeah.
We always had very good pronunciation. But thank you for letting me be vulnerable and share the blocked experience I've been in. I've been very under the radar, so no one knows this. So thanks for giving the platform. I'm now going to go and be very vulnerable tonight.
Well, I know it's a pleasure. Like I said, this podcast, I always like to give people their due, and you were very much an inspiration early on. Did I have the podcast back then? Did I? No. Okay, so it came like pretty shortly after because I think that was like 2017, and I was already thinking about the podcast, and then I must have
You were
started.
buying your equipment. You were buying your kit, I think.
Oh, okay. So I was starting it. Yeah, because I think I must have started it that January, February, or December. Because I know we bought the thing in December of 2017, the hosting. Anyway, like no one cares, but I care, and I want you to know that meant a lot to me. Like you are really, a badass artist. I think people should get into your work. I'm glad that we got to talk a little bit about that one piece because that is a really interesting piece and people should go check it out. And we'll be back next. Oh wait, any other things that we can plug? Your website?
Yeah, the Work Show Grow website and also the Instagram. We do a lot of free material. We do a lot of educational content, so a lot of carousels about how to do things on our Instagram. And I've been we have a social media manager. She's been amazing at showing like I'm there when I'm not there, but I'm going to be showing up from Monday again on there. So yeah, that's kind of a really nice way to follow the energy of this community of people that are sharing how things happen and sharing opportunities and not making it competitive. Like it's such a breath of fresh air. So
Yeah,
I'd say
yeah.
that if you're feeling like you're not sure what's happening, and yeah, just come and be part of the positive energy of enjoying the journey. Essentially, that's what we're doing. We're enjoying the journey because you just
Yeah.
don't know what the destination is. So it's like you might as well enjoy it while you're still trying to get there with other people.
I have never known an artist that was so serious about art making, honestly. So I'm not worried about your blockage being permanent. If I can get unblocked, I mean, you just got to get past the pressures of who of how you think you need to do it or what you think you need to be, you know? And I think Julia's got your back on that. Anyway, we'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related.